Hi friends, Alex Kai's here, and this is a home in Seattle. As of recording this video, we still don't know who's going to be president. So if this is out of date by the time you've watched it, and the market's crashed, I'm sorry. But I know the question on everybody's minds these days is, how's the real estate market? It seems the consensus is that people mostly just want a little bit more space. On one hand, demand has mostly stayed the same for the past few years, but everyone's selling their condos. We can see here, this is about a year's worth of data. The number of listings has just shot up over this past year. This is about the time during quarantine here. Number of sales, or the demand line here, has pretty much stayed the same. So if you're looking to buy a condo, then this gap that we often talk about is nice and wide for you right now, and it's a good time to buy. But if you want to sell, then you should definitely try and hold off as long as you can. We can see that there's already been a dip in number of listings, so hopefully we can go back to a more manageable number here. So if you're not in the condo market, you're probably looking for something with a little bit more space. Like a house! So how is the single-family home market? Well, historically, November and December are a pretty good time to buy because competition starts to go down and there's just not as many home shoppers out there. But because of the pandemic, everything got pushed back a little bit, and we're still seeing a little bit of competition out there. But this month, and we're gonna look at the data in a minute, this month the numbers are starting to go down, and I think we're gonna start to look a little bit more like normal. Just like the last graph with condos, we're gonna look at houses, the number of listings, and the number of sales. And this is a year's worth of data from November last year to October last month. So this is houses, supply versus demand. We can see that when we separate houses and condos, things get a little crazy. Houses have just been all over the place this last year. The market's really dictated by consumer behavior. And with lower interest rates coming out this year, people have just been buying like crazy. And for a while, the number of listings couldn't keep up, and we saw a really competitive market. The last few months, it's been widening a little bit, but it's still stayed very competitive, lots of multiple offer situations. This last month was the first time since the beginning of the summer that we've actually seen a decrease in both number of listings and number of sales in a month. Let's take a moment to talk about rental market, because I've been getting quite a few questions about this one. I found some interesting numbers out there. Since the beginning of the pandemic, rents in Seattle have dropped about 14%. And that's the third steepest drop of any major US city. In October, rents were about 12.5% lower than they were this time last year. That brings the median price of a one-bedroom apartment down to $14.50 a month, and a two-bedroom apartment to $18.50 a month. Now, it might be a great time to rent, better than it really has been in any recent history. If you're mulling over this rent versus buy conundrum, then you should definitely go out there and look at some of these calculators on the internet. I really like the one at nerdwallet.com. You can play around with the rent versus buy numbers and find the point where it breaks even. It's really good for trying to figure out this question. Okay, there's been some other really big real estate news. Did you hear about Redfin?
Well, you told me about it.
Well, they...
Okay, so basically Redfin was after, there was a 2-year investigation. So people did their due diligence and they were sued by the National Fair Housing Alliance, as well as 9 other fair housing organizations. So they all teamed up, sounds like 10 in total, and sued Redfin. Why?
Because Redfin's been doing this, or allegedly they've been doing all this digital redlining, which mostly happened in the 50s, the middle of the 20th century.
Well, not digitally.
Well, not digitally, but traditional redlining was when banks would refuse to put out loans in certain neighborhoods. So they would literally draw a red line around neighborhoods, mostly minority neighborhoods, where they didn't think that values would increase, and then they wouldn't give loans in those neighborhoods.
So they would say that they were identifying those neighborhoods not because they were ethnic minorities, but they said that they were dangerous neighborhoods, or the buildings were run down and values weren't going to hold. But what that often equaled was ethnic minority groups.
Yes.
Group neighborhoods. Okay, interesting. So
now digital redlining, all of these fair housing organizations are coming together, and they're saying that Redfin is refusing to offer services in kind of the same way in these minority neighborhoods. But Redfin's doing it by setting price minimums. So they're not offering full real estate services in these neighborhoods where that aren't hitting a price minimum.
And that's because they think it doesn't make economic sense for their company.
That's what they say, but who knows?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I honestly did not think that redlining existed anymore. That's exactly the same thing, essentially.
Pretty much.
Except, of course, getting a mortgage is different than getting a real estate service. But in the end, it's kind of having the same effect of these traditionally oppressed groups continuing to be oppressed. So that's pretty interesting. But I did read one interesting commentary about it, which was posed the question, Redfin's a big publicly traded company, and is it a big company's or any company's job to force positive change, or is it their job to respond to their shareholders who are expecting returns? Is it a company's job to make money or to address systemic racism? I mean, ultimately, I hope that they can do. I think that's what this moment in time is doing, is it's changing the conversation a little bit so that by addressing these systemic issues, these companies will end up making more money because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an either or question.
Yeah.
You can do both.
Yeah.
It's great that these issues are being unearthed and discovered in the real estate industry, and I look forward to continued conversations. So if you're thinking about making a home in Seattle, send me a message. Bye. You didn't actually drink that.
It's really hot.